Hi, and welcome to the Old Bandicoots with another episode. We'll start with names, brand names. Do they matter? The common sense approach is, of course, that every single brand ought to cue the category, mean something to people, signal what the position in the category is. Narayan, what's your take?
There was a time, still, there are clients out there who would want logical reasons for selecting a brand name. I mean, everybody knows that a brand name is important because that's what your product is going to be known by, called by, and therefore it's a long shot decision. Steve Jobs is supposed to have famously told his partner then, when they were looking at naming their company and their product, he said, if in the next 15 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour, whatever, if we are not able to agree on a name, let's just go with Apple. At one level, it would appear that Apple, for a new computer company, would probably be the furthest away from anybody's mind of all the names they could have chosen to name their company. Therefore, the point being that brand names have their place, and it's useful to know that that is not going to drag you down or lift you up in and of itself. There used to be a thought, and it's still there, that a name has to be logically justified. I mean, if you went to some of these high powered management consultant companies, and I've been involved with some of them while working for clients, and when the clients wanted to come up with a brand name for something, some years ago there was these one of these big management consultant groups almost making it like very logical that the name had to be this, and therefore over a period of 20 slides they reduced it to a listing of names if you went this way, another listing of names if you went that way, came down to a final short list of what they thought was promising, and they came down to five, and from there they recommended one. If you're extremely left brained as a client or as a CEO, you may enjoy this process of choosing a brand name, which is obviously very important. Like I said, you're christening a new thing in the world, and therefore you're going to be living with it forever. And therefore, it seems like only natural that you even call in these big guys and pay them a lot of money and to go about it this scientific way to. Whereas, really speaking, it's all taken to that kind of absurd extreme is probably not necessary. If an apple was good enough for Steve Jobs,
I'd
so
like
so
to just take it in one direction, which is exactly opposite to whatever you've said so far. In Chennai, there is this place called Jannal Kadai, which is essentially it's a window shop, and they have been selling eatables for about 40 years without name board, without a menu, and it's literally a hole in the wall shop. The origins could be that it just started out as somebody who found it convenient, and then rather than have a shop facing the road, that is the best he had, and he started from where it began, and it took on a life of its own. And the same thing is said about the Tirunelveli halwa, whereas if you go to that, you probably have suit is as in the black, which is there right from the early days of the shop. And Tirunelveli halwa, as a kind of halwa that is enjoyed across Tamil Nadu and across several other places, has its own standing. You have some of these where there isn't even a name, there isn't even a semblance of an identity. But because of the context in which these brands have grown, because of the markets they were in, they managed to survive and thrive, as opposed to, let's say, something which is very completely, you have to put the rails on, you have to drive borders, and exactly like you mentioned, there was this whole thing of the client taking a presentation where very logically it was brought to.
I agree with what you're saying. To my mind, whether it is Janal Kadai or Kanchipuram Idli or any of those things, there are many of these
Yeah.
things that are named after places, and that is good enough. MTR pickle. Do we
Yes.
really want to know what MTR is all about? It doesn't matter. Now,
Yeah.
why should it be called MTR? Would it have been less or more successful if it was called something else? That's the point I'm trying to raise, that at one level, it is a little silly to be arguing about the perfect brand name kind of stuff. Nothing like that exists. To my
Right.
mind, there are only two things. One is a conscious decision whether you want it to mean anything at all, and that's fine. Like Janal Kadai, or it's an option. The second thing is, as long as the name doesn't mean anything in the category, but somehow it is unique, then that's the choice that you make between the two kinds of names that are possible. One is completely relevant, signals the category and all that, and the other is just doesn't do that. The person who's in charge of the business, it's that person's privilege to say, I want to call my suitings Vimal. That's
Yeah.
named after my nephew, that's named after my son, that's named after my uncle, whatever it is. So be it. No consumer is going to, what do you mean? Why are you calling it Vimal? That's none of the consumer's business anyway. I'm telling you my name is Vimal and I'm running ads. And therefore, you can like me,
Right.
dislike me, buy me, don't buy me. That's all. You can't be questioning my name in any case. This is not something new. This has been going on for quite some decades. I think in the 70s or 80s or even before, there were matchboxes. There was a matchbox called Cheetah's Fight, or was it Cheetah
Yes.
Fight?
No, that still exists. And they
Oh,
had
that's
this differentiation called carburized. When you
ah.
struck the match and then it curved and it didn't fall over and the spark didn't light up your clothes, all of those things, which was big technology breakthrough at that point.
Now, the
Yeah.
Cheetah Fight was a fairly involved matchbox label of a painting of a jungle in which there is a man with some axe or some bow and arrow or something, and there was a
Yeah.
running a cheetah running away. Quite an elaborate thing for such a small space of a matchbox. Somebody decided, yeah, that is a depiction of a cheetah fight. Few of us sat in a room and said, hey, this client has got a new matchbox. Why don't we call it something? What are the odds that any of us would come up with, hey, why don't we call it cheetah fight? So therefore, I'm saying people had no problems. There was a monkey brand toothpaste or a tooth powder then. Now,
Yeah.
why would anybody called something monkey brand? I don't know. It's not like as though monkeys are particularly known for their flashing white teeth or anything like that. These are all very
Yeah.
cute, nice examples from the past where some people truly understood branding in a very simple, direct way. Am I distinct? Am I different? And that was good enough in that category. Whether I needed to fit into the category was not something that those people bothered about in their own simple ways, it seems. And it was not, it's only apparently simple. It seems like a very sophisticated way, which today we are saying we follow by calling companies and brands Yahoo and Google, which mean absolutely nothing. It's just
Yeah.
nonsense. Now, if you were to take a name like Google by itself, it doesn't suggest a very serious anything, let
Yeah.
alone a serious search engine. And
Right.
therefore, somebody said, yeah, but that's different. So I like it. So perhaps the people who need all the logic in the world to even justify the christening of brand names are those people who don't know enough to trust themselves by saying I like it. When you don't do that, then you pay some company and make sure that you do spend a lot of money to get the whole logical presentation going. That was the point I was trying to make. Therefore, at some point you are going to reach the place as a business person, as the head honcho. It is going to be laid at your doorstep. Sir, these names have been coming in, and I can give you 50 pages of names and you can
Yeah.
look at it. Nothing is going to jump out from there and say the 17th one on page number 3 is the right one. There's nothing. It is just that you at some point you need to trust yourself and say I like something like this. Like I said, probably the only thing that seems to matter is that it is somehow unique or memorable or different. Previously we had also names like Data Max, which
Mm.
suggested what categories, or our own public sector companies, for example, Bharat Heavy Electricals. I mean, just the very name told you what they are into. It is just
Yeah.
that may not always be possible. For example, at a time when there were a lot of these companies that were coming up, one of them was a software company who briefed our account director, who was also the branch manager, saying that, I just need a name and I don't want any of these data max and this, and don't try to connect it with my business. I just want something new, interesting. And because that was the time when I was going through as a musician in Western music, I was learning to play a piece called Sonata in B minor. I still remember that. And
Yeah.
therefore, when Monday morning this guy came and told me they're looking for something like this, I said, why don't we do Sonata? And then my art director had a lovely little keyboard in black and white keys and all that, and put the name in some serif font, and it got sold in a flash. And that guy thought it was damn interesting. And the thing company exists even now, right? Sonata software.
Yes.
What does it mean? What does music and Sonata and Western music got to do with the software in any case? Nothing. And it didn't
Yeah.
matter.
And in all of these things, it comes down to finally whether that name stands a chance in the market. It helps if it's vaguely familiar or even if it's known in some other context altogether. For example, with Amazon, I think when it came out of the first e commerce store, they didn't call it e commerce or some e com or whatever it is that it was called at that particular point in time. It became a place that was known to people as the biggest rainforest in the world. And in some ways, that cued size, which I think is what Amazon ultimately wanted to be. So it was more probably an indication of ambition more than what the store really had at that point in time. And I remember this thing saying that they started with books only because it was very easy to package books as compared to some other stuff. So all of these, whether it's Amazon or Apple or Google or Facebook, for example, what does, if you didn't know Facebook and it was not this massive entity that is staring at you day in and day out, imagine a world 20 years ago and you were told Facebook and you would say, what does that mean? Is it some kind of yearbook, or what exactly is the product in the first place? So it's only when you remove all the things that you've associated and built around a brand and then take it out of that context and then see if that name means anything. For example, we go back 80 years and Lifebuoy, which essentially was only about saving people, became the biggest bar of soap, became the most popular soap within a certain category, carbolic soap or whatever it is. And all of these things are added on to the brand later.
Yeah, that is true of Cadbury's and Horlicks and
Exactly. Exactly.
Will's cigarettes and Capstan and whatnot. By
Yeah.
themselves, these are just sounds. Now, the
It's
very fact when I say Horlicks and you're thinking of that bottle with that whitish kind of powder in it, simply
right.
means the association is complete. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that the horror of it reminds you of something and the licks means something. It doesn't mean anything. It's just somebody's name or something, God knows. And
Yeah.
Cadbury by itself is, the association is so strong over, what is it now? Maybe 100 years. And therefore,
Yeah.
you know that that dairy milk, the purple packaging, and all the glasses of milk being poured, all that kind of stuff comes to your mind. All that comes to mind very easily, not because the word tells you to think of that. It is just that it has been promoted, like you rightly said, and the association has been made. So, which is why I sometimes think anything could be called anything. I mean, really, if I would go that extreme to say that if you've got a new thing, find something you like, and if you like that name, just go. I mean, you being the owner or some serious, very senior person in the hierarchy, or some head honcho, or somebody thrust with this responsibility, thing is, just don't be boring. Just be bravely be a little different in the category. You're just trying
Right.
to increase your chances of being remembered, in the hopes that, as we spend, as we get to be known in that category, people will start associating. And once people associate, you're home. I mean, you're done. I mean, a Nike didn't need to be called Nike to be successful. A product called Modern Bread. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it used to be popular then. And that
Yep.
Modern Bread had little squares, blue, red, white squares on its packaging, quite distinct. This is not exactly a brand name, but a brand graphic of some kind. Very, very recognizable, and very useful in a country like India, for example, where graphics also count, not just the name. And this person who was telling me, a senior, was saying that they had gone to a certain designer to get it done. And that designer was asked, why is it that you've chosen those squares? To which that guy said, it comes from the gingham pattern, which is the tablecloth used in London or in England. And therefore, that cloth was used as the tablecloth, as we call it, or was it napkins? I'm not sure. Something like that. The gingham pattern was very familiar. And he just said, it just came from there. And I thought, why not put it on bread, which is a very breakfast thing in any case? Now, this is a real abstruse thing. There is not even a 0.5% chance that anybody who bought that bread in the later years and made it such a
It's going to
successful brand would even
relate the
ever
pattern
know
back.
that it was a breakfast pattern of a cloth called gingham in England. And this is absolutely, you can take it for granted. You don't need to do research. You can take for granted nobody knows about any such. But the thing is,
Yeah.
it gives you internal consistency. Like I said, it's for the history books. It's for some person in the company. There are reasons to feel proud about it. I'm coming from a larger space. I'm coming
Yeah.
from some aesthetic background. I have a certain reason for doing it, kind of stuff. And that is not part of the communication. Names and designs and brand names are important. And we are saying, do they matter? Yes, because you're going to be living with it. Therefore, the more love you put into it, the more care you put into it, the more reasons that you put into it, it just helps you and your company and the people in it feel very solid and strong and nice about that brand. And that's good enough to go. From the external world's point of view, you just need to be distinct. In a software category, are you a Sonata? In the search engine category, are you a Google?
At the end of the day, it's the customer who makes the choices. It's the brand custodians who decide which way the brand is going and at what point it begins to make a difference to people in the market.
You don't have to have a reason to name a brand. You don't need a reason for a Yahoo and a Google and all these Horlicks or a Cadbury's. And if you say, no, I want to call call my company Data Max because I want to make it clear what's wrong in that. So all I'm saying is, if there is any rule, it is to satisfy yourself. The only external rule I would say is that be distinct. Don't let your brand get confused with somebody else, and especially the leaders in the market. Be distinct.
If you have your own take on what having a brand name is, then feel free to add your point of view in the comments. We look forward to seeing you the next time around. Thank you.